Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm really excited to have on Jess Starwood. Welcome to the show, Jess.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Glad to have you. We've had a bit of communication over the years, and I want to say this might be our first time formally chatting with each other. So you're a chef, forager, mycologist, and herbalist, and that's a lot of different hats to wear. I'm just kind of curious, kind of which came first, and how did all the other interests of yours start weaving into each other?
That's a good question. Yeah, well, herbalism and food pretty much happened simultaneously. And, I really began to realize that, food is our medicine. So, they both really kind of go hand in hand. Um, and yeah, food was really what I was interested in most. I got into cooking probably 15 years ago or so, and just tried to push it as far as I could and get to a cuisine that is as close to what nature provides, and like what are we supposed to be eating, instead of something from a package that no longer resembles food. So that has kind of guided my journey, at least for the beginning of it. And then I realized, it's so much more than just sitting down to eat. There's a whole other elements to all of that. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, wild food does have a lot more nutrient density to it, doesn't it? I suppose when people hear about you and your work, they probably have this assumption that you're consuming like 100% wild diet, but that's probably not the case, right?
Not the case, especially having two teen daughters that turn their noses up
Yeah.
at anything that may have come from the ground.
Right.
But they're coming around, and also it is a very challenging, way to live, especially to keep up with the modern world. It's like, yeah, I could eat, 100% wild food, but I still have a mortgage to pay. I still have bills to pay.
Right.
And so it is doable, but
Yeah.
you have to sacrifice an awful lot to get to that point. So finding that, uh, you know, an appropriate balance is, I think, the key.
So you mentioned being a mother to two teenage gals. My daughter's 12, so she's fast approaching that, but she's 12 going on 13 for sure. But how do you kind of look at that as far as raising them with nutrition in mind? Do you kind of the way I kind of do it is like the 80-20 rule, where I'm like, as long as my daughter's eating 80% pretty well, I think it's okay to let them have the junk food on occasion. I guess part of the reason I say that is because I'm afraid of developing taboos. How do you kind of look at that as far as like raising children to be conscious about what they're eating, but also not, going all in, I suppose?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Totally.
And one that, I mean, it's been a journey. When they were very young, when they were first born, actually, that's when I started down the rabbit hole of, eating cleaner and, even vegetarian and veganism. And even I did a pretty long stint with raw food. And while, you can get really mixed up in these ideals and like what's food, what's not food. And, of course, as a mother, like I'm going to want the best for my kids,
Right.
but, having their other parent, with completely different values and
Right.
ideas about food, which I hadn't, I didn't, that wasn't a thing when we were together before kids. But then, I had this kind of awakening of like, oh, I need to feed these kids good food. And he wasn't on board with that. So that in itself was a huge battle. And then, as they got into school, all of these other elements that I had tried to, shield them from, the candy, the processed food, the stuff that's like, oh, there's no way that, my kids should be eating this junk. I know how bad it is.
Yeah.
And then, over the years, just relaxing into the idea that, what, this is the world that we live in. And even though it felt, it was tough for me, it was really tough to, be like, okay, yeah, you can eat this stuff that is not really food. And I see, the effects, on them.
Oh, totally.
But then, at the end of the day, everybody's on their own journey. And
right.
Last thing I want to do is to, make somebody feel bad for their food choices. And they're going to have to learn as they get older, and see what works for them, what doesn't work. And I just hope, but I mean, I also know that like they've been around this other alternative idea about food, and maybe they'll come back to it when they get older and realize that, oh, mom was onto something, and it's, yeah, I can only guide, but not control. So
Amen. Yeah, I have this optimistic view that my daughter will also kind of come around and, I don't know. Who knows? But they're their own people, and we can only do the best we can do. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So along with being a forager, you're also an author.
Mm-hmm.
So you wrote a book, I want to say in 2021, called Mushroom Wanderland.
Yeah.
I originally read that as Wonderland, but it's Wanderland. I like that. A
Yeah.
forager's guide to finding, identifying, and using more than 25 wild fungi. Can you tell us more about that book?
Sure. Yeah, when I suggested the title to my publisher, they were like thinking I had a typo, and I'm like, no, but I was actually very surprised that they went with it. And they thought it was a good idea. So I was like, yeah, and it really kind of emphasizes the idea of my perspective of hunting mushrooms is, it's a wander in the woods. It's not a trip to the grocery store, and it's takes into account the whole picture of, getting to know your land, getting to know the environment you're around, and learning to read it, learning to see areas where there might be mushrooms, and coming back the following years and learning what shows up there and what doesn't. And, it's kind of shares a way of life. I have a lot of stories in there. There's a fun story about getting lost in the woods and having to get rescued. And so that's fun. And I think that's what, I meet a lot of other mushroom hunters, and I hear a lot of similar stories, and just how, by learning how to hunt mushrooms, they've developed a better connection with the earth, and the land, and the seasons, and the weather, and their food as well.
I wish I had the book in front of me. I remember we had a copy in the office when I worked at Mountain Rose Herbs. It's an absolutely gorgeous book. I'd actually like to read one of the book reviews. There's a ton of great reviews on the Amazon page, at least, and a lot of them are super long. So I just chose a short one. That's how I decided to read this one. But so they say the book is a work of art. Get the book for the full experience. The book has a look and feel that sets it apart as something very special. People of all ages and interests will find the experience captivating while flipping through the pages. Once the hook has been set, Jess, the wordsmith, further draws her readers into the world of wonder and the world of mushrooms. So yeah, what a great review. And a lot of people kind of comment on how beautiful it is. People talk about having it as like a coffee table book and whatnot. Mm-hmm. You took the pictures, didn't you?
I did. Yeah. Other than there's like 2 or 3 in there that I didn't, because I had my publisher gave me 6 months to write and photograph the whole book.
Wow.
Yeah. And the thing is, I had originally proposed a wild food cookbook, and they're like, you know what? No, we want a mushroom book. And I'm like, Okay, that's cool. Mushroom season just ended in Southern California, so there's no mushrooms for another, 9 months. So I ended up having to travel all across the country to track down mushrooms to photograph. So that that was, I mean, it all happened during COVID and everything was shut down. And luckily, I was able to travel to the East Coast and Pacific Northwest and Rocky Mountains. And it was a really, really fun process, getting to know other foragers in other areas and being like, hey, okay, I know it's mushrooms and I know you have all the secret spots. If you could maybe share a couple, I just want to take a picture and I will leave your patch alone, I promise. Um, Mushroom hunters are very secretive about their spots, but it was awesome to meet people who, total strangers on the internet, but then they're like, yeah, you know what? Come on out and I'll show you my black trumpet spot or my chanterelle spot. And I was just blown away by the people that I got to meet in that process.
So yeah, beautiful photography. You mentioned stories. There's also, I want to say, recipes in there as well. How is the book kind of broken up? Is it by mushroom or yeah, how's the book broken up?
Yeah, so I profile basically what I've chose is the top 25 mushrooms that I find are the most useful, most interesting, and the more easier to find and identify. So it's really a book for beginners, but I profile each mushroom with photos, descriptions, what to look for, how to find them. And then I also have a section on, I did break them up into culinary mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, and then I also pointed out some toxic mushrooms as well.
Okay.
And then recipes and stories sprinkled throughout.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy.
So on the description, I read this on the Amazon website. By the way, before I move on, is there a place you'd like to send folks to purchase the book?
Mm,
I saw you have signed copies on your website.
I do. Yeah, if you go to my website, I have my apothecary shop that also has books available there. I will sign them, maybe even throw a couple stickers in there too.
There you go.
Yeah, so signed copies are available on my website, but if you want a cheaper version, you can always go to Amazon.
There you go. But regardless, dear listener, please leave a review on Amazon because it does help the author out. But if you really want to support the author, go to jstarwood.com, and under the store section, I want to say you could purchase a signed copy. But on the description of the book, it says, "The breathtaking beauty of mushrooms from Master Forager. How to identify and use them in cooking, home remedies, and spirituality." So the spirituality aspect piqued my interest, and I was just kind of curious, how are you looking at using mushrooms in a spiritual sense? Am I to assume we're talking like psilocybin here? Or I've also heard reishi, like reishi mushroom has been a very strong spiritual mushroom as well. But how do you look at spirituality and mycology?
Well, on a chemical basis, yes, you can put psilocybin and even Amanita muscaria into that category. But I feel like the whole process of mushroom hunting can be a spiritual experience. Spiritualism is going to be different for everybody. But for me, it's about connection, and developing that connection to what you're eating, to your environment, to your community, to everything around you. So yes, mushrooms have been a direct access to my form of spirituality. And, like I said, that's going to look different for everybody. But I feel like that's Yeah. I mean, you can take some psilocybin mushrooms and go wander in the woods, and you're really, really going to have that experience, you know? Um, otherwise, yeah, and even just a walk in the woods without consuming anything is going to bring on, a sense of connectedness.
I love that you say that, and it's of course my shallow brain goes immediately like, "Oh, you got to take psilocybin." That's of course what she's referring to. But a lot of the listeners know my story, and I went to the Columbine School of Botanical Studies back in 2011, and I was all about adaptogens and sexy herbs like that, and they're all in cut and sifted jars. And it wasn't until I went out in the old growth forests in Western Cascades,
Mhm.
Oregon, where they don't outright advertise their school as a spiritual experience, but you definitely end up, you can't help but have a spiritual experience when you're out in the old growth forest looking at tiny little flowers through loops for hours on end. So I'm so
Yeah,
glad you brought that up, because it really is, yeah, all you need to do is a walk in the woods, and that is the spiritual aspect to it.
absolutely.
So you wrote about one of my favorite mushrooms, the matsutake, which does grow in
Mm.
Oregon. Does matsutake grow around you in the Los Angeles area?
There are rumors,
Oh, okay.
but it's a
You
yes.
mycologists. Yeah.
Yes, I know. I know.
Okay. We won't give away your spot.
They are in California. Yes, I'll say that.
Right. There you go. Yep. All right. So you recently wrote on your blog about matsutake, which I want to say from memory, matsu it means pine mushroom. Am I getting that
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's the pine
Uh,
mushroom.
it is the aroma. So this is kind of shows your beautiful prose here, right here. This was on your blog. I want to say it was your most recent post. It is, well, you were referring to the smell. You were
Mhm.
saying something about how you don't like how people usually describe the smell of matsutake. So you say it is the aroma of an old wooden house in the northern woods, damp, dark, mossy, with a library of 100-year-old books and crowding the shelves, creaking floorboards, dripping fog, and steel pines just outside the drafty window. A tea kettle bubbling on the wood-burning stove. The fog filtered light coming in the window is indiscernible whether it is morning or afternoon, but a cup of warm spiced tea is almost ready to be sipped from a favorite mug.
Yeah,
That really puts you in a place, and I could just kind of visualize where I've harvested a matsutake before. But really, I'm just kind of curious if you could kind of talk about your fondness for matsutake mushroom and what you love about it.
absolutely. Yeah, so when I first heard about this mushroom, and there's this classic description of it that was popularized by David Aurora.
Mm.
He's a very well-known mycologist. He says that it smells like dirty gym socks and red hots. And I'm like, that does not sound like one of the most sought after mushrooms in the world. Like that just doesn't sound appetizing to me. Um, so I've been hunting matsutake for quite some time. I found, well, a couple of years ago, I found probably with a friend, found maybe 40 pounds of matsutake on the East Coast. And I was bathing in that aroma, it was
Mm.
just magical. And I just couldn't get past the idea like that was not that description felt just, I could see where he's coming from, but I'm like, there's more to it than that. There's more depth. Um, there's more to it. So, and really this description came to me just out of the blue recently. My friend in LA had bought some from the Asian market, and he's like, "Here, what do you think of these? Do you think these smell pretty good for being, store bought?" And I smelled them, and I was like, and just that whole scene that I described just
Mm.
seemed to overwhelm me. And I'm like, "That's it. That was it." It was just this, you know, click of there's something so just amazing to it. All those words.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing about what I do is, I'm bringing people out to the woods or the desert or wherever, and seeing people experience scents and flavors and, you know, aromas, tastes that they've never experienced before, and there's no words to describe them, you know. So getting people in touch with those senses is really fun to be part of, you know. And especially with wild food and working with chefs who, you know, they're not used to these other flavors, and a lot of times they don't know what to do with them and how they pair with other things, or how to really accentuate their different notes, you know. So I think it's just a really fun area to work in.
I've never been to crazy fancy restaurants in the Los Angeles area, and I've never seen matsutake on a menu before. How have you seen matsutake used at these fancy restaurants?
Well, it can be, you know, a lot of times people think that they are to be cooked like every other mushroom. You know, throw it in the pan with lots of butter, lots of garlic, lots of salt and other flavors, but that ruins it. You lose all of that flavor, aroma, and because all those volatile oils are going to they're very transient, you know, and you're going to lose that if you don't capture it. So the best way is going to be some way to, you know, hold on to those. And the less competing flavors you have, the better. Just a pot of rice with some sliced matsutake in it, steamed, is phenomenal. Like, you really get that full experience. You don't have to add butter and oil and garlic and all these other things to it. It's you know, it's just a subtle flavor that is, you know, helps you to appreciate those little smaller things in life, you know?
Absolutely. I've been changing a lot of the way I've prepare food, and I used to overly rely on, like you said, butter and garlic. And I haven't been using nearly as much butter in my cooking lately. And I think you're right. It really does help you capture the flavor of the ingredient a lot more. And like you were saying, part of the beauty of mushrooms is the smell. I've never really thought about the fact that you're trying to preserve that. So, all right. So lightly steamed matsutake mushrooms over some white rice. I love that.
Or even tempura, because you're encapsulating it in the batter and then it steams it inside. So good.
I love
so good. Yeah.
I brought this up a couple times on the show before. For whatever reason, I felt compelled to tincture matsutake one time. Have you ever tinctured these culinary mushrooms? I've also tinctured chanterelles. I've tinctured, I want to say, candy caps, lobster mushrooms, just for funsies, just to try to get that flavor and whatnot. And I presume that there's medicinal effect in these mushrooms as well. Do you ever tincture these mushrooms?
I have infused matsutake in whiskey before. So technically a tincture. And
strictly for like the flavor and the enjoyment of that. That's awesome.
But it does bring out more of the mushroomy notes as well. So I'm still experimenting with those. But like candy cap that one's a fantastic one to infuse. I made a candy cap mead a couple years ago, and that's
awesome.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I made a chaga mead one time, which was delicious. What is your chef background? I know you've, like, I want to say I've heard you worked in some restaurants before. Do you have any like formal training or anything like that?
I don't. I have worked in a few restaurants here and there, and then quickly realized that working in a kitchen, a commercial kitchen, is not where it's at. At least for me. I would rather cook dinner for a small group of people. I've done just last year, I did I want to say like 12 or 15 course meal for just under 20 people. And that was just magical evening. every dish had wild food flavors in it and featured something very unique and unusual. And it was just a beautiful experience for everyone.
Yeah, I used to overly romanticize the whole kitchen experience. I had a big like Anthony Bourdain phase, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I want to be a chef." I'm like, I don't think I could hang in that environment. But
It's
I do love.
rough.
Yeah, yeah. I could only imagine. I've never done it, but yeah, I'll stick to being the home chef here. But when you're doing these wild foods dinners, who's helping you out? Or are you doing everything?
I used to do everything,
Yeah.
but now I have my partner,
Oh, nice.
Mike, and he is my personal sous chef, and he is fantastic in the kitchen. He's really great at helping out and all the prep work and even the high action stuff. He's really, really great at doing as well. So that's been kind of a game changer. And then my kids are getting older, so I'm hoping to have
Yeah.
them help out as well and get them more exposed to all these foods and also seeing people's reactions too, I think is important.
Absolutely. I wasn't originally going to ask you this, but you seem like a good person to ask. I'm sure you know about the work of, like, say, the United Plant Savers. Is there any concern about over harvesting some of these mushrooms? Any sort of harvesting ethics and whatnot you'd like to share?
That's a great question. So when it comes to mushrooms, I'm a lot less worried about sustainability and like over harvesting because you're basically picking, you know, it's like picking apples off a tree. You're not actually harming the tree itself. It will continue to produce given the conditions are right. The
Hmm.
things that are detrimental though is going to be loss of habitat, when people are stomping around and um, disturbing the ground, that's going to have an impact. So, when I take people out, it's very small groups. We try to stay on the trail and make as little impact as possible. But that mycelium is there in the ground or in the trees and organic matter and whatnot. They're going to continue doing their thing until there's no food left. So when we start clearing land and putting in a shopping mall, that's the problem. That's where we're
Right.
going to run out of space for these organisms. But when it comes to plants, I'm definitely a lot more adamant about, small harvests and only, harvesting what you are going to actually use and all those ethics.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. I usually start the show with this question or one of the first couple questions, but we're a full half hour in, so I'm going to ask it now. We could kind of go the mycology route or the herbalist route or both, and I'm just kind of curious, who have been some of your mentors?
So many.
Right.
Shoot. Uh,
You don't want to leave anyone out.
I know. The mycology community is full of some really amazing people that I'm honored to have met and work with. And it's so collaborative. We're all learning from each other. And um, oh, yeah, I don't know if I can name any names right now.
That's fair.
Um, but
Where'd you study herbalism?
I got a master's in science from the American College of Healthcare Sciences.
Oh,
They're in Portland. And so, yeah, I'm also working on my doctorate right now with them.
I saw that.
Yeah.
You want to tell us more about what you're working on in the doctorate?
So I'm just getting started. Haven't really refined my dissertation topic just yet, but I'm very, very interested in the intersection of mushrooms and people and how they can be helpful for us, whether it's through psychedelics, whether it's through overall health benefits. There's just so much interesting stuff that's happening right now that I'm just anxious to get involved in that research and hopefully, find some good evidence to publish some good, helpful research.
I saw on your website I don't know if it was in stock or not, but you were selling, I want to say, dried amanita mushrooms, and that kind of took me aback. And I was wondering if that's even, hi, kitty.
Yeah, that's my kitty. That's his Bella.
What? Isabella?
Bella.
Oh, Bella, cute.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of taken aback, and I was curious, like the legalities behind that, because the way I know it is like I want to say, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say there's toxicity to it, but then also it's like a drug-like substance. So I was just curious if you could speak about that.
I am happy to. Yeah, Amanita muscaria is one of my favorite mushrooms, and I've been working with that for a long time as a culinary mushroom, for one.
Really?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
So this mushroom, while it does contain compounds that will, give you some, not necessarily hallucinations, but put you in a delirious state and some, gastrointestinal distress and make you feel pretty off and weird. But all those compounds are water soluble. So they can be removed by boiling them for between 7 to 15 minutes, discarding that water, unless you want to save that water for dinner and a movie.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can then cook the mushrooms as you would normally, saute them with butter and whatever. They're actually very delicious. Amanita genus mushrooms can be some of the more tastier ones, in my opinion. But yes, they also are used medicinally. They're really good at addressing pain topically. So by making a alcohol extract with them and using that topically can help reduce pain. And then, of course, there is the more, let's say, spiritual side of them. And there's a lot of people who are starting to do some research on its effects with, sleep issues and depression and anxiety and all these similar issues that are being addressed with psilocybin, but it's legal. Amanita muscaria is not an illegal mushroom, and they are widely available all across the country. And while they can produce kind of a weird and uncomfortable or not so great trip, there is, and they can be a little finicky too. Like the dosing can be off. I believe it's like the Rocky Mountain varieties are a little bit less potent than other ones. So you don't always know what you're gonna get, but that may be part of my research too. So it's, I think, a very interesting and exciting area to look into. I know a lot of people are even trying microdosing with it and having some interesting results.
Very interesting. Yeah, I've never thought you could eat it before, just like as a culinary mushroom.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've been asked this quite a bit, but do you know like the story of the relationship of the Amanita muscaria mushroom and Santa Claus? Is there the correlation there, or can you share that story?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I would have to say, like, the first time I found Amanita muscaria was on the winter solstice in Northern California under a Douglas fir tree that looks like a Christmas tree, and underneath there were just all of these red and white mushrooms. I'm like,
Presents.
oh, look at the Christmas presents, And so the correlation, like the red and the white and the idea of it's a gift, and
Totally.
yeah, there's so many stories, and there's a lot of people who are, kind of making the connection between those two. But I stick more to the science side of things. But it all comes from somewhere. People used to use these mushrooms before they even knew what the chemicals were and how to work with them. So they knew there was something about these mushrooms that were really special. So
there is something about stumbling upon an amanita when you're hiking around. Like there's just such joy that happens when you see that mushroom. I've only seen them a few times out in the wild, but it's always like, wow, what a vibrant, beautiful mushroom. And even Super Mario loves it too,
oh yeah, I mean that has become our cultural icon of a mushroom. Like
Right.
that's what people think of when someone says mushroom, or you're on your phone and you're texting, you need to convey the idea of mushrooms. It's an Amanita muscaria. That's our go-to image. Not a shiitake, not a oyster mushroom. It's an Amanita muscaria.
Yeah. Earlier when I was asking you about your who have your mentors been, for whatever reason I flashed back to I used to go to the wildflower or the Native Plant Society meetings, and then I'd also go to the Mycology Society meetings in Eugene, Oregon. And there appeared to be like two different groups of people. I'm sure there was overlap, but for whatever reason, I was like, oh yeah, these are the mushroom people and these are the plant people. And we're all a little bit of both, but I feel like there is kind of a distinct style to the two groups. And I was just wondering if you wanted to speak about your love of the mushroom community specifically.
Yeah. I have never felt more connected to a group of people in my whole life. And I've always been kind of a outsider, kind of a lone wolf type person who has always, never quite found my crowd. And then when it came to the mushroom community, it was like, oh, here they are. And, these are people who love food, love going outside, love walking around in the rain, picking mushrooms, and have a love for mushrooms. I was finally felt like, yep, this is it. These are my people. And we're, I think, just a group of misfits who come to mushrooms from just all sorts of different angles. There's chefs, there's scientists, there's artists, and there's people who just like walking around the woods, so there's so many different types of people. And yes, there's some competition when it comes to spots and all that, but for the most part it's all in fun. But yeah, there's some people who will never ever ever share their spots, and you're going to be in big trouble if you let that secret out.
Absolutely. Have you ever been to the Mushroom Festival in Eugene, Oregon? The Mount Pisgah Mushroom Festival?
Not that one. I have been to many across the country, but I haven't made it to that one yet.
I just got to say, so speaking of like plant people and mushroom people, I want to say the Wildflower Festival brings in around 1,500 people per event, and that's always in May at Mount Pisgah. And then the Mushroom Festival brings in like 8 to 10,000 people.
Wow.
And they'll go rain or shine. It's always raining, actually. It's all Sunday, and it's just raining the whole time. And yeah, you really can't stop the mushroom people from going out and enjoying their mushrooms.
Oh no, it'll be pouring rain. Just like last weekend, I was at an event called Soma Camp, and it was pouring rain, and there was a 9 o'clock at night UV light hike to look at mushrooms under UV light. Wow. And it was packed. The whole class was packed, walking around in pouring rain, 9 o'clock at night. It's freezing cold to look at mushrooms under UV light. And
and you were loving it.
Yeah, it's a good time. And yeah.
So you mentioned you've been to lots of different mushroom events. I'm guessing you've been to the Telluride, which is one of the most famous ones. Can you tell us a little bit about that event?
Yeah, so that was my first mushroom festival. And after that first year, I was hooked and
Totally.
went back every single year. Just, I'd make the 14-hour drive to go out there for a week. And I mean, not only just the beautiful scenery in that, part of the Rocky Mountains, which is just magical, but the community of people that make that trip every year from all over the country, and it's just something really awesome to be part of, and getting to know more and more people over the years. And it's really good. It's really good.
So it was like a 14 or 18-hour drive for you. One thing I know about you is you love to travel. You're all over the place. Can you talk a little bit about traveling with a forager's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, over the last 8 years, after my divorce, I really just kind of took to the road, going back and forth because, custody with my kids and stuff. But every chance I could get, I was going somewhere new, exploring new places, and tasting what those places were like. Getting to have huckleberries in the Pacific Northwest, and mesquite beans in the Southwest, and all the different types of mushrooms on the East Coast, and harvesting sassafras. And it's a lot of people go and travel and they go to a mainstream restaurant, and or maybe it's a smaller mom and pop restaurant, but you're still like ordering lasagna or a hamburger, and you're eating the same types of food. And maybe they'll have like, oh, it's a local dairy, we get our cheese from a local dairy. Okay, cool. But what does that place really taste like? I spent a little bit of time up in Alaska and tasting just totally different flavors of different herbs and berries that you don't find at the store. Nobody sells them, and that, I think, is one of the coolest things I love about travel. Getting to even going to Mexico and tasting all the different herbs down there, collecting Damiana in southern Baja, and those are the memories that really stick with me. It's one thing I teach in, especially like my kids' classes, is that, you're really gonna hold on to this information and these memories when you are involving all of your senses. When you're able to see, touch, taste, feel, even the sounds, that's why in that matsutake description, I add sound, because it really brings home an experience and a memory, and you're going to remember that, like I remember the sounds of the birds in a certain mountain range that was really special to me. And I can really, if I think about it, I can go back to that in my mind, and it's a really rich and meaningful experience.
When you're traveling and foraging, are you going out there with the intent of collecting various ingredients and then you're bringing them back home and then making a meal with it? You mentioned, like, say, the huckleberries in Oregon. I mean, that you could just kind of pop a bunch in your mouth right there and get the taste of that location. Or are you like collecting a bunch of these, bringing them back to your hotel or Airbnb and then creating food with it?
Well, I don't usually get an Airbnb or a hotel. I usually travel in my van or a rental car.
Oh, respect.
Yep. So I have traveled very cheaply over the last many years.
I love
And
it.
yeah, I have a whole van I have an apothecary in my van with different
That's
herbs
awesome.
I've collected. And I'm generally collecting, for personal use. And I'm very aware of, I'm a stranger in these lands. I'm not here to just take everything I can find. But, sampling in small amounts, taking back, maybe collecting some leaves for some tea that I'm going to have at a later date and, remember that experience. But yeah, like the huckleberries, I brought them home for my oldest daughter because we had huckleberry ice cream in Montana several years ago, and she was like, oh, I really miss huckleberry ice cream. And I was like, oh, you know what? I happened to have, I was up in Oregon and I collected a bunch and brought them home, and that was a meaningful connection.
And your daughter looked at you and you said, Mom, you're pretty cool, didn't she?
She will on occasion admit that, but most of the time, I drop her off at high school and she's like, Mom, drop me off, not in front of the school, and do
Oh my
not
gosh.
go pick those mushrooms, because I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of honey mushrooms
Right.
right there in the front of school. And she's like, absolutely not. Do not get out of the car, Mom. Drive away.
Oh my gosh. Typical
Yep.
teenagers. Do you ever make your way out towards the Midwest?
That is actually an area that I have not been to. I was supposed to go to the Midwest Women's Herbal
Herbal.
Conference,
Yep.
and I ended up having to cancel due to an issue at home. So I was like finally excited to make it out there, but I did not. So that's on my list of an area I need to explore.
I ask for a couple reasons. I'm sure you're aware of Sam Thayer's work,
Yes.
wild foraging expert. He has I want to say he's the host of this wild foods event. And it's every summer. I would definitely recommend looking into that. And just selfishly, then I could just drive down the road and meet you in person. We could hang out because we live in Appleton, Wisconsin now. But Amanda and I have this idea. I don't know if you remember this MTV show called Cribs. But back in the day, they would show like different celebrities' houses and stuff. And Amanda and I, every time we visit and interview different herbalists when we're on the road, we're always like, herbalists have the coolest homes. I want to like capture some of this and like share it with the rest of the world. And I was like, I think it'd be cool to do a van edition with Jess Starwood and see your herbal van.
That would be so fun. Yeah. Yeah, because I have, built it out to be, what I would need as somebody who collects things. And, I'm often have stuff hanging from the roof because I'm drying herbs. And, yeah, I'm surprised, someday there's going to be mushrooms growing up from under the floorboards, I'm sure. But,
Does the van have a name?
it doesn't. I've
Okay.
never named my vehicles. So,
Fair enough. Well, why don't we talk about your school? It's called the Wild Path School, if I'm
Mhm.
getting that right. Can you share a little bit about what that's all about and when classes in session and all that?
Yeah, so I have several different levels of participation for that program. Over the years, people, they would come to my classes and like, I want more. I want to be more like you. Like,
Totally.
okay.
Yeah.
And so I developed a apprenticeship program where people can, work with me one-on-one, and I basically teach them everything I know. We go out into the wild every other week, and field trips and like hands-on. Everything is, you're right there with me, and then getting experience helping in the kitchen to get ready for an event. So working with all the different wild foods and flavors and all that. But it also includes one-day classes for people who are, casually interested. And I have right now it's mushroom season here in Southern California. So I have a mushroom series of, I think it's 4 different classes. And that gives you a full, I think it's 16 or 18 hours of, out in the field, in the kitchen, the whole range of learning how to find, identify, and use, the wild mushrooms we have here.
Awesome. So folks want to learn more about the classes, the book, your wild foods dinners, that's all under the umbrella of jstarwood.com.
Yeah. Mhm.
Awesome. We will leave links as per usual in the podcast show notes in the YouTube description. Um, Also, before we get out of here, I saw you post a really beautiful post. By the way, dear listener, go check out Jess Starwood. Is it at Jess Starwood on Instagram?
Yes, just that Starwood.
Okay, you got a great feed, and I'm presuming
Thank
you
you.
do a lot of those photographs as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I'm a big fan of persimmons, and I saw you post about this thing called hoshigaki. Am
Yeah.
I getting that right? Yeah. I never heard that term. I myself, I love food. This is like a new concept for me. I'm just hoping you could share with the audience, A, what is hoshigaki and why do you love persimmons so much?
Yeah, so hoshigaki is a Japanese technique of preserving persimmons. And persimmons in general are one of my favorite fruits. I know some people are like, oh, they don't have a whole lot of flavor, but I like subtle flavors. I love the different types of them, you know, the Fuji ones, which are more like eating an apple, and then there's the Hachiya persimmons, which are the more heart-shaped ones that are super astringent if they're not fully ripe. So there's this cool process of hoshigaki where you take the unripe Hachiya persimmons and you peel them and then you hang them to dry over probably about like a month and a half, you know,
Wow.
6 to 8 weeks. But you have to massage them every day. And that helps to distribute the sugars. They're going to develop this really beautiful powdery looking sugar coating on the outside. And then at the end of that process, you just slice them up and eat them like candy. And they're
Wow.
super tasty.
Is it kind of like fruit leather tasting, like, or
Kind
not
of.
tasting, but like the texture? It's like a
Mhm.
dried fruit,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah, it's like a
Wow.
little gummy. Mhm.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask Amanda when she's editing it. Can we throw in the picture that you have on your Instagram account?
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely. Yeah.
sweet. Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give that a go. Plus, yeah, just having them hanging around your house is kind of pretty and everything. So,
Mhm.
awesome. Well, to hear about any upcoming projects you have, and if that involves creating a wild foods cookbook. Are you going to be pulling
Ah,
that off at any point?
well, yeah, I keep wanting to make a cookbook or follow up with another book for sure. I'm not sure what that's going to be. I'm going to focus on my doctorate for the next couple years and then
Oh, right.
see where that leads. And but you know, I do give away recipes pretty freely. So people coming to classes, I'm always giving out recipes. Um, but I am involved in a lot of the mycological societies. I do a lot of volunteer work, a lot of organization of events, because it's the events that really like they're just super cool. You know, getting people
Absolutely.
together, go hunt in the woods for mushrooms, eat mushrooms, all that stuff. So my partner and I, Mike, we are organizing a really big event coming up in August in conjunction with the North American Mycological Association. And we are going to be hosting about 100 people to go out on forays and also heavily focused on the culinary aspect. So we're going to be eating some really fantastic mushroom focused food with some, you know, some high-end chefs, and I'm super excited to be, you know, putting that together.
Sounds fantastic.
So yeah.
Where should folks go to like stay updated on all your work? I'm on your newsletter. Would you say that's the best place?
Yeah, the newsletter is going to be probably the best. I do everything myself, so all my advertising probably could be better, but you know, it's
At least it's all very beautiful.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So newsletter, website, Instagram. I do Instagram stories a lot, and that's usually like in the moment updates on what's happening, what's going on. And I'm always happy to chat with folks on social media and yeah, bringing the
Sweet.
community together.
Rad. Well, let's kind of wrap up here. Just kind of curious, what's the mission of your work? And then maybe just a couple closing thoughts if you have any.
The mission of my work is to satisfy the hunger for connection in people. I did a presentation last summer that I just pulled out. This name for my talk was Hungry for Connection. And I'm like, that is what I'm doing. People are hungry for connection. People want to connect. And, all this world of technology that we think we're being brought together, but we're not. I easily can sit in my house or my van for weeks on end and not see another person. We need connection, not whether it's through people, food, our environment, our community. So that I think is at the very essence of what I'm doing. And yeah, people can have something cool to eat or taste, or they get to see some pretty trees and mushrooms and moss and ferns, but it's that connection that we're all looking for. And that is what I'm trying to do.
That's a great place to wrap up. I'd say you're doing awesome work, Jess. It was really great to get to know you over the past hour. Thanks again for bearing with me through those technological difficulties, and really appreciate you coming on the show.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. We'll see y'all in the next episode.
Thanks so much for watching today's episode of the Herbalist Hour. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want more great herbal content, be sure to subscribe to our HerbRally YouTube channel. If you enjoy these Herbalist Hour episodes and you'd like to join us live, you can do so by becoming an HerbRally Schoolhouse member. Learn more at herbrally.com/schoolhouse. And if you want to get your first 30 days for free, use coupon code YouTube30 at checkout. So our HerbRally Schoolhouse members get access to exclusive video classes, monographs, and a lot more herbal community discounts, along with joining these live Herbalist Hour interviews. So one more time, herbrally.com/schoolhouse. Enter coupon code YouTube30 at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. All right, we'll see you in the next episode, and take care.